This podcast is brought to you by Audible. Now, Audible is the number one audiobook platform in the entire world. Now, why I really like this is because audiobooks are great for learning on the go while you're working out, while you're driving, or doing any miscellaneous tasks. Instead of doing something mindless, we can actually be learning and adding to our knowledge base. And you know that we're all about being the greatest versions of ourselves here. And part of that is learning more, applying it, and progressing in our own lives. I've read over 400 books just this past couple of years on Audible. You can find anything that you want here, any type of genre, any type of book. The membership includes one free credit a month, which is basically one free book per month. And books here tend to be much more cheaper than you would have them physically. If you want to try Audible today, you go to audibletrial.com/AG Wellness. That's AUDIBLETRIAL.com/AG Wellness. That is where you'll get your first month for free. Now, let's get to the podcast. The incredible healing power of fasting. What is fasting? Fasting has so many remarkable benefits. Today, so many of us are overeating. And I'm not just talking about the amount of calories that we eat, but the amount of times that we eat. We are not giving our digestive system any type of break. You have to keep in mind that digesting food actually takes an immense amount of energy to actually do. If you think about it, you're actually turning food into your own tissue until it's no longer recognized. It's kind of a miraculous process if you think about it. Fasting has actually been done since the dawn of time. Like, our ancestors have done this not out of choice necessarily, but because they had to. Like, they didn't have food all the time, so this is kind of built into our DNA. And one of the main things that it does is a process called autophagy. Autophagy translates to self-eating. Auto, that's automatic. Phagy, that's Greek word for eating. And what this does is basically cleans up dead cells, debris, and replaces them with new, vibrant cells. One of the number one anti-aging processes in the entire body. Cleaning up senescent cells that you no longer need. Now, the thing about eating is that it turns off this process called autophagy, the spike of insulin, and ingestion of calories. So this is a big reason why you need to take breaks from eating. And we'll get into in depth about that in a minute. But for now, let's actually get more benefits. So number one is autophagy, which we just talked about. But there's something called neuronal autophagy. So this is autophagy in the brain. So cleaning up dead brain cells and making the brain more alive. Like, how important is that, honestly? And a study done in the Journal of Autophagy actually showed that participants who undergone fasting showed high rates of neuronal autophagy and actually prevented neurodegenerative diseases. Number two is stabilizing blood sugar. Fasting is a great way to stabilize blood glucose. This is because when there's no food coming in, obviously it's not going to spike at all. Even with that, though, keep in mind that cortisol actually spikes glucose as well. So you don't want to overdo stress. That's just a side note there. But when it comes to lowering insulin, fasting may be the best option for that. And insulin is a hormone that drives glucose into the cells. Number three is immunity. Like I said, the autophagy, cleaning out the old inflammatory senescent cells and replacing with new ones is going to keep your immune system in tip-top shape. Number four is weight loss. Of course, you're not taking calories. It's a lot easier to lose weight. But beyond that, you're training your body to burn fat for fuel instead of sugar. Now, there's something called metabolic flexibility. Now, our bodies are designed to burn fat and glucose. But the majority of us are very good at burning glucose. This is because what we're accustomed to. We're accustomed to all the sugary, highly processed foods. And when we go to lose weight, it's a lot more difficult to do when our metabolism is not trained to burn its own body fat. Like, when you start doing fasting in the beginning, just like exercise, it's going to be a little difficult. There's going to be a challenge point. But your body is going to begin to adapt, and it's going to become like breathing. Like, you won't even think about it, because your body is adapting to burning fat. Just like the ketogenic diet. The ketogenic diet is, in a way, designed to have you become more metabolically flexible. Because one of the primary reasons we have body fat is to use it as fuel. Like, again, many of us has lost this ability. And fat burns a lot more cleaner than glucose. Like, there's something called AGEs, or advanced glycation end products. Basically, when glucose binds to protein and damages our own protein through the burning of glucose rather than fat, if that makes sense. There's something called ROS as well, or reactive oxygen species. This is also an inflammatory byproduct of burning too much glucose. So again, we want to be more metabolically clean so we can be more productive as well. Like, just feel like tip-top shape all the time, and it's wonderful. Like I said before, it also is great for stabilizing insulin, which is the number one fat-storing hormone. So lowering this is going to help regulate body weight as well. We also know that fasting stimulates HGH, or human growth hormone. And this is great for protecting muscle and burning fat. Number 5 is cancer. Fasting has been shown in many studies to be anti-carcinogenic and reduce tumor size. This is because it lowers the growth signals to these diseases. Some of the nutrient sensors it blocks is mTOR and insulin. mTOR is mechanistic targeted of rapamycin, one of the main growth triggers in the body. Now we need mTOR because it's very important for growth and building muscle as well. We just want to keep it in check. Cancer cells also primarily feed off of sugar, depending on the cancer. So in a way, you're starving the cancer cells. When you lower insulin, your chances for cancer go down. All right, so let's get into fasting methods. How do we actually do this? Some practical steps. Number 1 is intermittent fasting. Now this is going to be the most accessible, the most available one. And what this is taking a portion of your day, usually 12 to 16 hours. This includes sleep. So 12 hours will look like stop eating at 8 p.m., then you start again at 8 a.m. That'll be a 12-hour intermittent fast. And you get so many benefits out of this. Majority you get out of intermittent fasting as you do in a longer fast. And this is something that can be done daily. I recommend doing it daily, as a matter of fact. But ultimately do what works for you. Again, this promotes autophagy and all the benefits we just talked about. Think of it as exercise. Like, it may be a struggle point in the beginning, but if you stick to it, it will become easier over time. But ultimately, listen to your body, because your body is always giving you signals and feedback on what to do. So if you're really feeling terrible and diseased, maybe you want to reconsider it, or maybe do 10 hours and work your way up. Ultimately, this is a framework. So number 2 is going to be a longer fast. So this can be 24 to 72 hours usually. You do get to see more benefits from this, and this does not have to be done frequently. Personally, I do a 24-hour fast once a month, and I do a 16-hour fast every single day. I do a 5-day fast twice a year. You can do water fasts, you can do juice fasts, bone broth fasts, but basically, when you start ingesting any type of calories, you may get some diminished benefits. There are also things you can take with a fast as well to help enhance the effects. Coffee is one of them, for example, helps accelerate autophagy. And MCT oil, or medium chain triglyceride oil, also been shown. Something I want to talk about is, like, you hear people who say, oh, they just ate well, they exercised, and they came down with blank disease, right? So you don't have control over your health, they say. What I want you to understand is shit does not just happen. Like, a lot of times when people think they're eating well, honestly, they're not most of the time, but they're well-intentioned. But let's say you are eating perfect diet for you, right? Everything's customized, you have moving practices in, you're sleeping well, but you're super stressed out. Your relationships are terrible. You're not getting any sunlight. There's so many other factors of health, and we talked about on the show as well. Like, there's so many inputs, and ultimately health is not just one thing. It's not just nutrition and exercise. Those are very important pillars for sure, but you have to keep in mind that our genes require inputs in order to express its full genetic potential optimally. This is one of those inputs. And we take into account holistic health. It's about everything. It's not about being perfect, but it is about progress, focusing on the small wins every single day. I didn't start doing all this at once. What I did was I implemented practices over time. Now I'm doing all of them, and of course always learning. But the thing at the end of the day, it's about absorbing what is useful, discarding what isn't, and adding what is uniquely your own. There is a difference between health span and lifespan. Health span is the amount of years you're actually healthy. Ideally, you want this to be every single year that you're alive. Lifespan is the amount of years that you are alive. So that means you can be, like, diseased and chronically ill for like 20 years prior to death. And this, unfortunately, is a reality for most people. But it does not have to be like that. Saying it's old age is absolute bullshit. Look at your lifestyle. What are you doing? What have you done the past decades? The great thing about this is we can reverse it at any moment, or at least begin the process. It will take time, but when we start feeling the power within us taking generative actions, no matter what state of health we are in, we can at least start making progress in that direction. And the thing about lifespan is that we say we live longer nowadays, right? Well, due to innovation and whatnot? Perhaps. Keep in mind that trend is actually reversed like the past years. Like we are no longer living longer. Like the amount of life expectancy has decreased over the years recently. So that trend is reversed, first of all, because we can rely on these innovations if we want to, but if we're not taking control of our own wellness, like we're missing the point. So having agency, taking control of our own minds and bodies is where it all begins.